He who seeks to be loved becomes a prisoner. He who demands respect gains the freedom to exist without asking for permission. Pause for a moment. Before continuing with the automatic routine that governs your days, I want to pose a question you've perhaps always avoided facing. It's one of those questions that doesn't go away when you pretend it doesn't exist, because it echoes in the back of your mind like a nagging noise, resurfacing in quiet moments. The question is simple and at the same time brutal. Do you truly believe that being liked is enough to be respected? Do you believe that pleasing everyone is the key to staying safe, shielded from betrayal, protected from indifference and manipulation? If your answer, even if hidden, is yes, get ready, because you're about to face one of the most uncomfortable truths you've ever been told. From the beginning of your life, society planted a seemingly harmless seed in you, but it grows like a weed, tangling itself around your choices, your fears, and even the way you see yourself. Since childhood, they repeated to you like a mantra: smile, share, yield, be kind, be loved, and you obeyed. You strove to mold yourself, to not disturb, to erase any shadow of hardness from your gaze. You tried to become the one who pleases, the one who keeps the peace, the one who doesn't cause friction. And the reward? Ignored, used, passed over. How many times have you dedicated yourself, body and soul, to someone only to discover, when you needed it most, that you were completely alone? How many times have you chosen to swallow your discomfort, swallow your anger, even swallow the truth, just to avoid appearing ungrateful, just to avoid appearing cruel? This is the invisible prison that millions carry in silence. The false promise that if you're loved, you'll be protected. It's a deception repeated from generation to generation, an illusion cloaked in morality. But in practice, it only serves to produce domesticated people, easy to manipulate, ready to sacrifice themselves in exchange for crumbs of affection. And here's the uncomfortable revelation: the enemy isn't just those who take advantage of you, not just the people who drain your energy and disappear when you need them. The most dangerous enemy is inside your mind, in the toxic belief you've been forced to swallow without question. The idea that affection and respect are the same currency, but they are not. You can be loved and still be humiliated. You can be cherished and still be ignored. You can be admired as kind and yet simultaneously treated as disposable. Respect is something else. Respect changes the game. It's what builds invisible walls around you, what makes others think twice before crossing you. It's what protects your voice, your presence, your worth. And Machiavelli saw this with a clarity that has spanned centuries. He didn't write to flatter the masses. He didn't write to make you believe in happy endings. He wrote to open your eyes and show you how to survive in a world ruled by wolves. His message was cold, surgical, even cruel, but it contained a liberation. Don't seek to be loved. Earn respect. Modern psychology confirms what he already intuited. Studies show that people respect those who set firm boundaries more than those who are always available. History repeats the same lesson. Overly generous leaders were betrayed. Martyrs of their own kindness fell early, while strategists who knew how to balance compassion and coldness survived and left a legacy. Respect is born from the perception of solidity, from the certainty that you are not manipulable, that there is within you a silent force that does not bend to the convenience of others. Machiavelli didn't speak of morality, he spoke of strategy. He said bluntly that those who desire only to be loved are doomed, because love is fickle, but respect remains when admiration and fear are balanced. And here begins the deconstruction that can change the way you see yourself. Brace yourself, because the next few lines will make you uncomfortable. You were raised to believe that kindness is protection, that generosity is an absolute virtue, that being kind opens doors. But what if I show you that this kindness doesn't protect, but marks you as a target? What if I prove to you that reckless generosity isn't a virtue, but a trap? What if constant kindness, instead of opening doors, simply turns you into a carpet for others to walk on? Look at your life honestly. How many times have you automatically said yes, even though you felt a stifled no inside? How many times have you sacrificed your time, your priorities, your peace, just to avoid causing discomfort? Each of these moments was like training others, like teaching dogs to train. You give, they receive, you sacrifice, they take advantage. And the more predictable you are, the more you become a target. This is the invisible logic that governs respect. The predictable isn't respected, it's exploited. The transparent isn't admired, it's used. Do you think being nice is enough? Think about the kindest people you know. That coworker who always covers for others. That friend who always pays the bill. That relative who shouldered responsibilities without complaint. Are they truly respected? Or are they just the inexhaustible source of favors? The person everyone knows will say yes, even when they can't, even when they don't want to. Gratitude appears at first, but then evaporates. And the day they dare to say no, they're immediately labeled selfish. This is where the game begins to reveal itself. It's not about stopping being good. It's about stopping being transparent, about transforming kindness into a choice, not a conditioned reflex. Constant sweetness is not a virtue, it's weakness in disguise. The world reads this constancy as a sign of ease, and ease never breeds respect. To survive among wolves, it's not enough to be a lion. It's not enough to be a fox. You have to be both. Strength and calculation, sharp claws and strategic coolness. Think about it. When you always help, always give in, always sacrifice, you believe you're being recognized. But what you're actually building is a routine of exploitation. Others don't see the effort. They only see the result. They don't see the sacrifice. They only see the dedication. And like every habit, your generosity becomes normal. The extraordinary becomes banal. The gift becomes obligation. Virtue becomes a chain. This isn't theory, it's psychology. The human mind adapts to repeated stimuli. The first time it surprises. The second, it pleases. The 10th, it no longer stirs emotion. And the 20th absence is interpreted as betrayal. Perhaps you felt this way at work when you accepted an overload just this once, and that gesture became a silent rule. In your family, when you took on responsibilities to relieve others, and no one else stepped up to share the burden. In your friendships, when you swallowed your words to avoid conflict, and that purchased peace became your prison. How many times have you believed you were doing the right thing, only to realize you were only sinking deeper into the role of servant? This is the first shock. Kindness doesn't protect, it signals. It marks you as a target, as if there were an invisible inscription on your forehead saying, "Take advantage of me." And the more you reinforce this pattern, the harder it is to break it, because you've already educated everyone around you to expect you to always be available. This is the silent tragedy of millions. They believe kindness will give them power, but what it gives them is predictability. And that's why now, at the end of this first part, I want you to face yourself without masks. Ask yourself, in what area of your life has your kindness ceased to be a virtue and become a prison? At what point did what you believed to be your greatest strength become the chain that keeps you bound? Because here lies the uncomfortable revelation that opens the door to what's to come. Kindness, when constant and unlimited, is no longer a virtue. It's a trap. Today you believe it's what sustains you. Tomorrow it could be what destroys you. And this prison has a name almost no one dares to speak, a name you'll discover in the next part. You may have believed your whole life that kindness would be your shield. Perhaps you carried this idea like a magic key, believing that if you were kind, if you gave up on yourself, if you always offered, you would be protected. But the truth is, the more you automatically showed kindness, the more predictable you became. And predictability is the greatest poison in the power game. It's what turns virtue into weakness, a generous gesture into a sign of vulnerability. Think about how many times you said yes without thinking. Yes to the colleague who asked for help even when you were overwhelmed. Yes to the friend who needed a favor, and you canceled your plans to accommodate them. Yes to the family member who placed responsibilities on your shoulders that weren't yours. Each yes seemed small, seemed harmless, but together they formed an invisible chain. You grew accustomed to giving, and others grew accustomed to receiving. The habit crystallized, and what was your choice became someone else's expectation. At first there was gratitude. You felt useful, important, perhaps even recognized. But this gratitude was short-lived. Soon the gratitude disappeared and was replaced by silent demand. That gesture that seemed extraordinary became routine, and routine never inspires respect. The extraordinary is celebrated. The ordinary is ignored. Imagine the first time someone brought you unexpected flowers. The impact was strong, almost magical. But if this happens every day, the charm fades. The same happens with your kindness. At first, your help is moving. Then, your help is expected. And finally, its absence is interpreted as an offense. This is how boundless kindness ceases to be a virtue and becomes condemnation. Because the moment you dare to deny it, your entire history of sacrifice is erased. People don't remember how much you gave. They only remember the day you didn't respond. How many times have you experienced this? How many times has someone you've helped countless times called you selfish just because, for once, you decided to take care of yourself? This is the cruelest proof that kindness, when it becomes constant, doesn't protect. It exposes. It doesn't create respect. It creates dependence. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He wrote with the coolness of someone who knew that the human heart is not moved by justice or gratitude, but by expediency. He said that a ruler who shows only compassion is doomed, because compassion alone is seen as weakness. The lion that uses only force falls into traps, but the fox that uses only cunning never scares the pack. Survival requires the fusion of both, strength and calculation. This is exactly what you need to understand. Kindness doesn't need to disappear from your life, but it needs to stop being automatic. It needs to become a strategic choice. Because when your generosity becomes predictable, you are no longer respected. You are merely a resource, a tool available to everyone. Look at your routine. Think about work. How many times have you agreed to stay late to complete a task that wasn't yours? At first, you might have even been praised, but the third, fourth, or fifth time, there was no praise. It was expected. You became the one in charge. And the day you tried to leave on time, you were seen as someone who was shirking their obligation. At home, how many times have you taken on tasks that no one else wanted? Maybe washing the dishes, taking care of the bills, solving bureaucratic problems. At first, others were grateful. Then they started acting as if it were natural for you to do it. And if one day you didn't do it, suddenly everyone looked at you with indignation, as if you'd broken some invisible contract. This repeats itself in relationships. You were there, always listening, always supporting, always yielding. In the beginning, the other person called you special. Over time, your patience became an obligation. Your listening became an imposed silence. And when for a moment you wanted to be heard, the other person wasn't willing. After all, they had already grown accustomed to the one-way flow. This is the invisible price of predictable kindness. It erases the value of what you give and transforms your giving into an obligation. Modern psychology describes this as hedonic adaptation. Any stimulus, when repeated, loses its impact. What was extraordinary yesterday is now merely routine. A gift surprises once. The same gift, given every day, loses its value. Gratitude wears thin. Habit sets in. And what once sparked joy now sparks indifference. This is exactly what happens with your generosity. The more you give without limits, the less value it has. This is the turning point that almost no one wants to see, because accepting this means admitting that you may have lived for years in a pattern that only weakened you. And this admission hurts, but it's necessary, because only then can you break the cycle. What Machiavelli taught is that benefits must be given little by little, at calculated moments, so that their value is maintained. He knew that scarcity is what generates respect. Gold shines because it is rare. Water in a desert is worshipped because it is scarce. But what is abundant is always devalued. Now think about yourself. How many times have you been the person who always paid the bill at the bar? At first, everyone laughed, praised you, and felt lucky to have someone so generous. But over time, your attitude stopped being a surprise. It became an obligation. The day you didn't pay, the group looked at you differently. They didn't remember all the times you paid. They only remembered the one time you didn't. How many times have you been the friend who always listened, who was always available? At first, everyone sought you out because they knew they would find acceptance. But the day you didn't have the energy to listen, the reaction was one of frustration, as if you had betrayed a promise you never made. These examples are not far off. They occur in every corner of life, and they demonstrate the truth that almost no one dares to express. The more you give without calculation, the less value you have. Your kindness, if left unchecked, is not seen as a virtue. It is seen as weakness. And weakness in a world governed by vested interests and power is condemnation. But there is a way out. It's not about ceasing to be kind. It's not about becoming cruel, cold, or indifferent. It's about transforming your kindness into something unpredictable. When others can't predict your yes, they begin to respect you. When your generosity appears at chosen moments, it becomes precious. When you set limits and introduce uncertainty, the game changes. A silence before responding is worth more than 1,000 excuses. A firm, unapologetic no is more powerful than 1,000 concessions. Help given at strategic moments has more impact than 100 automatic favors. Remember the last time someone surprised you with help when you weren't expecting it. The effect was immense, precisely because it wasn't routine. That's what you need to recapture, the power of unpredictability. When you remove the guarantee of a yes, the world around you begins to value you differently. Your presence becomes more solid, your words stronger, your image more respected. And here's the most painful, but also most liberating point. Many people around you today don't respect you. They've simply grown accustomed to using you. They may even call you good, trustworthy, generous. But behind these words lies the truth. You've become predictable, and predictability is the key to being used. This is when you need to ask yourself, are you willing to continue being the inexhaustible source everyone consumes until there's nothing left? Or will you start setting limits, introducing silence, creating uncertainty, making your kindness selective? Because only then will it cease to be a prison and become a choice again. I want you to reflect and be honest with yourself. At what point in your life did your kindness stop being a virtue and become an obligation? Write it down, name it. Because only by naming it can you free yourself from the cage. Because this is the uncomfortable truth. Constant kindness is not strength, it's a trap. Today you believe it's what protects you. Tomorrow it will be the prison that suffocates you. And if you've felt uncomfortable up until now, if you've realized how much of this reality has already been present in your life, then you need to prepare yourself. Because what's coming next is even more disturbing. You'll discover how your generosity, which you believe to be an unquestionable virtue, is actually the sweetest and most lethal trap of all. Have you ever noticed how, when someone gives you something unexpectedly, your mind lights up completely? The surprise of an unexpected gesture triggers an intense feeling within you, almost disproportionate to the act itself. But this same intensity fades when the gesture becomes routine. What was once extraordinary dissolves into normality. This is the cruel paradox of generosity. The more you give, the less impact it has. The extraordinary doesn't survive repetition. Your generosity, however pure, becomes predictable and becomes an obligation. And the obligation is never respected. Gratitude fades, the demands grow. You give everything, but the more you give, the less it seems to be worth. How many times have you believed that giving more would make someone finally recognize your worth? How many times have you imagined that if you sacrificed enough, someone would be unable to forget everything you did? However, experience always shows otherwise. The human mind doesn't keep complete records of generosity. It stores the last interaction, the last gesture. If you offered 10 times and refused once, they don't remember all 10. They only remember the refusal. Collective memory acts as a selective filter that erases your effort and highlights its absence. And it is at this point that excessive generosity reveals itself not as a virtue, but as a chain. Now think of something simple. A father who buys a gift for his son. At first, the gift is exciting. The son jumps, smiles, and thanks him. But if the gift is given consistently, week after week, the reaction changes. Joy turns to expectation. Expectation turns to demand. The day there's no gift, the reaction isn't gratitude for the past, but anger at its absence. The same thing happens in your adult relationships. You've given so many times that when you're absent, there's no memory of the effort. There's resentment at the absence. This isn't malice. It's just how the human brain gets used to what's repeated. Have you ever noticed how quickly people forget how much you've sacrificed? Have you ever wondered why your dedication, instead of generating undying loyalty, seems to evaporate like smoke into thin air? This phenomenon is described in psychology as hedonic adaptation. It's the same mechanism that explains why the joy of achieving something new is short-lived. A new car dazzles in the first few days, but soon becomes just a means of transportation. A pay raise excites the first paycheck, but soon becomes routine. Human beings adapt quickly, and the extraordinary becomes banal. When your generosity enters this cycle, it ceases to be a strength and becomes a shadow. And the cruelest part is that you don't realize this while you're stuck in the loop. You believe that giving more strengthens the bond, but in reality, it weakens it. It increases your dependence on the other, and this dependence is dangerous. While you sustain the cycle, there are smiles and compliments. The moment you fail, there's accusation. What was love turns to resentment. What was friendship turns to silence. What was admiration turns to judgment. This transition is abrupt, as if the entire history had been erased in seconds. What would you do if you discovered that all your efforts to be indispensable were precisely what made you disposable? What would happen if, instead of recognition, your generosity was just a preparation for disdain? This is the point Machiavelli had already understood with disturbing clarity. He said that benefits should be offered at strategic intervals, at chosen moments, and never in excess. Because what is abundant is despised, while what is rare is revered. Gold is precious because it is not found on every street corner. Water is valuable only when it is scarce. Scarcity is the engine of value, and what you did by giving yourself without measure was transform something rare into abundance. Your presence, your help, your energy became sand instead of diamonds. Imagine yourself in a relationship where you always pay the bill. At first, it's celebrated as generosity, then it becomes expected. Over time, the gesture loses its luster. When you stop paying, instead of recognition for the past, there's a demand for the gift. This is the hidden logic that destroys the value of your commitment. The same happens when you always say yes. Repeated yeses lose their weight. They become automatic, and automatic things never inspire respect. Have you ever stopped to think about how many times your generosity has turned into invisibility? Can you remember a time when someone ignored all your efforts just because you dared to say no? The most painful thing is realizing that constant generosity doesn't build respect, it builds dependence. And dependence is a treacherous monster. While fed, it appears docile. When food is lacking, it transforms into a beast. Such are relationships based on relentless giving. While you give, you are adored. When you refuse, you are hated. Affection that seemed solid turns out to be conditional, tied to your willingness to continue sacrificing. This is where you need to understand. Generosity is like a strategic resource. When used wisely, it can generate true loyalty, strengthen alliances, and inspire trust. But when used without limits, it destroys balance and turns you into a hostage. The world doesn't value what is given freely. The world respects what requires effort, what imposes conditions, what cannot be accessed all the time. Why do you believe your yes needs to always be available? Why do you insist on offering your energy as if it were infinite, when deep down you know it runs out? The point isn't to stop giving. The point is to learn to give thoughtfully. Always ask yourself, who does this gesture strengthen? Who does it weaken? What message am I sending by saying yes and by saying no? Because every act isn't just an act, it's communication. It's a symbol. When you give thoughtlessly, you communicate weakness. When you give with strategic coolness, you communicate power. The uncomfortable truth is that generosity without rules is not a virtue, it's a trap you build around yourself. Every time you offer to please, you tighten another chain around your own neck. And contrary to what you might imagine, those who get used to receiving from you don't feel closer. They feel more entitled, the right to demand, to press charges, to criticize when they don't receive. Have you ever wondered why some people seem respected even when they don't give much, while others, who give their all, are seen as invisible? Have you ever reflected on the paradox that the more you give, the less others seem to see what you do? This paradox is the heart of the trap, because your mind has been educated to believe that giving more is always good. But reality shows that giving more is self-effacement. Respect isn't born from quantity, it's born from quality and scarcity. One favor given at the right time can be worth more than 100 offered without measure. An unexpected helping hand can create a deeper mark than years of constant availability. What you need to see is that virtue, to be respected, must become calculation. Generosity, to be strength, must become a strategic choice. And this choice begins when you understand that you owe no one anything beyond what you choose to give. When you break the idea that you need to please to be loved, you open up space to be respected. How many times have you felt empty after giving too much? How many times have you realized that by giving too much, you lost yourself in the process? This emptiness is proof that unlimited generosity doesn't build, it destroys. It drains your energy, consumes your time, and erases your boundaries. And when your boundaries disappear, you cease to be a person and become a function. The function others use when they need it. The always available friend, the always ready employee, the always willing relative. You lose your name and become a piece of paper. And roles aren't respected, they're used. And here's the unexpected twist. The problem isn't the lack of recognition from others. It's your inability to recognize your own worth. Because when you don't set boundaries, it's not just others who ignore you. It's you who ignore yourself. You're the one telling the world, my energy is priceless. And the world believes it. What do you think would happen if, starting today, you removed the automatic generosity? What would change if your yes were no longer guaranteed? The answer is simple. Your value would increase. Because respect isn't born from blind constancy. It's born from uncertainty. Respect is born when others don't know if they'll have access to you. When they realize your time isn't given, it's granted. This uncertainty breeds caution. And caution is the twin sister of respect. Therefore, your mission from now on is not to abandon kindness, but to make it strategic. It's to give when you decide, not when you expect it. It's to help when it strengthens, not when it merely drains. It's to learn to use silence as an answer, pause as power, and no as a shield. Because it's in this game of scarcity and calculation that your generosity becomes a weapon, not a shackle. Are you willing to continue being a slave to your own virtue? Or will you choose to transform it into strategy? Because here's the revelation that needs to be engraved in your mind. Unlimited generosity doesn't make you a saint, it makes you a prisoner. And what comes next will show you something even more disturbing. It's not just about what you give, it's about how you appear. Because in the end, the world doesn't care about your intentions. It only cares about the image you project. You may believe the world sees what you feel, that those around you can perceive your essence. But the reality is much harsher. The world doesn't see who you are. It only sees what you appear to be. This is what determines how people treat you, how they react to your presence, how they decide whether to respect or discard you. It doesn't matter if your heart is honest, your intentions are noble, or your mind is brilliant. What truly matters is the impression you make in the first few seconds. Psychology calls this the halo effect, and it is relentless. A visible trait taints the entire judgment. If you convey firmness, even your kindness will be interpreted as strength. If you convey weakness, even your intelligence will be seen as irrelevant. This is why so many who possess immense virtues live invisibly, while others, who master only the art of appearance, gain space and authority. The world is not governed by what you feel. It is governed by what you project. Think about how many times you have been unfairly underestimated simply because you seemed insecure at one point. Remember when you walked into a room and, even though you knew you were more competent than everyone else there, were treated as if you had nothing to contribute. This wasn't due to a lack of talent, but a lack of control over your appearance. Your essence may be golden, but if it's hidden under the dust of uncertainty, no one sees it. This is where the concept of the mask emerges. Not a mask as falsehood, but as a strategy. Many reject this idea because they believe wearing a mask is a betrayal of oneself. But think about it. Is a surgeon who speaks firmly before an operation being disingenuous? No. He's aware that his posture will build trust and, indirectly, save lives. A leader who remains silent for a few seconds before responding isn't being cold, but is controlling the pace of the conversation so that his voice carries weight. The mask is this resource. It doesn't serve to deny who you are, but to protect your essence from the world's hasty judgment. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to command a room with just a look? Have you ever wondered why, at certain times, a silent pause can be more respected than 1,000 words? Science shows that first impressions are formed in less than 7 seconds. In that short space of time, people assess whether you're trustworthy, authoritative, and worthy of respect. And their judgment rarely changes after that. Studies at renowned universities have shown that professors evaluated by 30-second videos were rated the same way by students who had spent months with them. This means that what you project in the initial moment carries more power than years of interaction. If you enter insecure, that label sticks to you and is difficult to shake. If you enter firmly, your authority is established before you even open your mouth. This is one of the most uncomfortable truths. It's not enough to be competent. You have to appear competent. It's not enough to be strong. You have to convey strength. It's not enough to have dignity. You have to project dignity. The world doesn't enter your mind to verify who you really are. It reads you superficially, interprets your signals, builds an image, and acts accordingly. Therefore, if your appearance shows fragility, your kindness will be interpreted as submissiveness. But if your appearance shows solidity, even your gentleness will be seen as a choice, not weakness. Recall historical situations that reveal this logic. Winston Churchill, in his wartime speeches, wasn't just about content, it was about form. He spoke with dramatic pauses, firm intonation, and calculated gestures. His image conveyed resilience, even when the country was on the brink of collapse. Leaders who showed hesitation at critical moments were quickly forgotten or replaced. The difference wasn't just in their decisions, but in how they presented themselves to the world. And don't think this applies only to leaders or public figures. It applies to you in your everyday life. The way you sit in a meeting can determine whether your opinion is heard or ignored. The speed with which you respond to a message can communicate whether you are in control of your time or always available. The tone of voice you choose in a conversation can make the difference between being taken seriously or treated as a detail. The stage is not a metaphor. The stage is you. With every meeting, every conversation, every entry into a room, you are being evaluated as a character. Have you ever wondered what character you're playing without realizing it? Have you ever reflected on the image you project when you believe you're just being yourself? Many believe that wearing a mask is false, but the truth is that not wearing a mask is naive. It's handing over your raw essence to a world that doesn't mind devouring it. The mask is armor. It's the shield that prevents others from manipulating your fragility. It doesn't mean lying about who you are, but directing the scene in which you appear. Your essence remains intact, but your presentation is controlled. And this presentation, when well managed, redefines how others perceive you. See how this works in simple situations. You arrive at a new environment. If you enter with your head down, without making eye contact, you convey submission. People don't do this consciously, but their brains interpret these signals as weakness. They'll automatically treat you as someone who can be led. Now imagine entering erect, taking up space, maintaining brief but firm eye contact. In this case, before you speak, the impression of solidity is already established. The mask hasn't changed who you are inside, but it has radically changed how the world chooses to treat you. Do you remember the last time you felt disrespected before you even spoke? Have you realized that it wasn't about the content of your mind, but about the signals you sent out without realizing it? This is why Machiavelli asserted that power lies not in who you are, but in what you make others believe you are. This isn't cynicism, it's reality. The world doesn't have access to your inner self. It only sees the surface. If you don't control that surface, someone else will. The silence that should be strength becomes weakness. The smile that should be choice becomes submission. The gesture that should be generosity becomes obligation. The mask must convey two fundamental messages that never contradict each other: selective openness and non-negotiable boundaries. This means you don't need to be closed off or inaccessible. You just need to be selective. Offer openness only to those who truly deserve it, while also making it clear that there are barriers that will not be crossed. Those who show complete openness become too available. Those who show absolute isolation isolate themselves. Respect is born from the invisible thread that no one is sure whether abuse will encounter a wall or an open path. This thread creates caution, and caution is the first step to respect. Notice the small situations in which this applies. When sitting, taking up space communicates presence. When speaking, slowing down creates tension and weight in your words. When responding, pausing before saying yes communicates that you're not on autopilot. When saying no, ending the sentence without justification shows solidity. These are simple signals, but they rewrite the invisible narrative others construct about you. Have you ever noticed how, in certain environments, all it takes is one quiet person for everyone to feel the need to measure their words? Have you ever noticed that it's not the amount of speech that builds authority, but the way in which presence is maintained? Your public image is your invisible contract with the world. It determines whether you will be respected or exploited, and every detail counts. The clothes you choose, the posture you adopt, the silence you maintain, all add up to form the perception that guides the treatment you receive. It's not superficiality, it's survival. The mistake lies in believing that your pure essence is enough to be respected. Essence needs a frame, and that frame is the mask. But there's a cost. None of this is free. Every smile you offer, every minute of attention, every gesture of kindness, it all involves an expenditure of energy. You need to understand that you're spending a finite currency, your time, your strength, your presence. With every uncalculated concession, you consume capital. With every unmeasured effort, you wear yourself out. And if you don't control this expenditure, you'll run out of reserves to maintain the image that commands respect. Have you ever felt exhausted from always being available? Have you ever noticed that the more you try to maintain an image of constant generosity, the more drained you feel inside? This is the point many miss. The mask only works if you have the energy to sustain it. If you overexert yourself trying to please, your image of strength cracks and fissures appear. Fatigue reveals itself in dark circles, hesitation, and suppressed irritation, and the world reads these signs as weakness. The price of the mask isn't just effort, it's management. Energy management, time management, and focus management. This is where the story becomes even darker. Because it's not enough to control your appearance. You must learn to manage the internal resources that maintain that appearance. Otherwise, you might build a strong image for a moment, but it crumbles all too soon, and the respect that seemed solid dissolves in seconds. And that's exactly what you'll discover next. Because the truth isn't just that your image decides your destiny. The truth is that every act, every word, and every gesture you deliver to the world is a currency. And if you don't know how to manage this invisible economy, someone else will manage it for you. Pay close attention to every gesture you make, every word you utter, every minute you give to the world. None of this is neutral. Nothing is free. Every action you take, every concession you offer, every moment of attention you give is like a coin being withdrawn from your own account. But most people live as if they have an infinite treasure, as if they can spend without thinking, as if their time, energy, and presence were resources that will never run out. This illusion is the silent cause of the fatigue that corrodes millions of lives. You don't notice the toll coming until it accumulates with heavy interest, and suddenly, you find yourself exhausted, resentful, drained. This is the invisible cost no one taught you to calculate. How many times have you said yes when you really meant no? How many times have you accepted responsibilities that weren't yours, just to keep the peace or avoid appearing selfish? Each of these moments was a payment in silence, in wear and tear, in loss of vitality. And like any debt that grows unchecked, this bill arrives with a vengeance. The price is the exhaustion you feel when you wake up without energy, the irritation that flares in small situations, the feeling of carrying a never-ending weight. You believe this is just part of life, but it isn't. It's a direct result of a poorly managed internal economy. Have you ever thought about how banks work? If you spend more than you earn, you accumulate debt. You don't manage these debts, the interest multiplies until bankruptcy is inevitable. The same happens with your life. Every time you volunteer your time without calculation, you're wasting capital. Every time you donate your energy to problems that aren't yours, you're getting into debt. And before you know it, you no longer have the reserves to invest in yourself. You become dependent, a hostage to the demands of others. The world learns that you are an inexhaustible resource, but you know deep down that you're broken inside. Have you ever noticed how your body starts giving you signals when the bank is about to burst? Have you ever noticed how exhaustion is not just mental, but physical, as if every cell is screaming for rest? The problem is that society has trained you to believe this sacrifice is a virtue. They say that always saying yes is kindness, that always being available is generosity, that giving up yourself is proof of love. But the truth is that this pattern is not a virtue. It's slow suicide. Those who spend everything for the benefit of others don't build a legacy. They build ruins. Those who sacrifice themselves without measure don't save anyone. They only nullify themselves. It's like on an airplane, when they tell you to put on your own oxygen mask before helping others. It seems selfish, but it's survival. Because if you fall unconscious, you don't save anyone. This is the calculus you need to learn. It's not enough to manage your appearance. It's not enough to control your mask. You need to control your resources. Because respect only lasts if you have reserves. The exhausted don't lead. The weary don't inspire. Emptiness doesn't set limits. When you allow yourself to be completely consumed, you lose not only energy but also authority. People sense it even if they can't explain it. They sense your weakness and begin to treat you accordingly. Have you ever noticed how people who always put themselves last are the ones who receive the least recognition? Have you ever wondered why, despite all their sacrifices, they seem invisible in the end? The answer is simple and brutal. Because the world doesn't reward excess. The world exploits. The more you give, the more natural exploitation becomes. Your lack of limits transforms your energy into a public resource, available to anyone who wants to consume. The problem isn't just with others, it's with you, who haven't learned to say no. And every no you swallow is a piece of you that disappears. But there's an even more disturbing revelation. Even when you believe you're helping by choice, you're often just feeding the illusion of control. You think saying yes will guarantee loyalty. You believe your availability will build respect. But that never happens. What you actually build is a one-sided dependence. The other person learns to expect, not to respect. They learn to demand, not to value. They learn to use, not to thank. How many times have you heard an empty thank you that sounded more like formality than real recognition? How many times have you realized that the thanks have faded after the third or fourth time you've helped? That's why you need to understand that gratitude doesn't pay debts. Thank you isn't currency, it's smoke. It dissolves into thin air without substance. If you build your life expecting gratitude to maintain your bonds, you'll live in constant disappointment. Because gratitude lasts only a short time, but the expectation that you'll continue to give lasts forever. This is the trap. You believe your generosity is accumulating credit, but in reality, it's accumulating debt. This is where the narrative takes a turn. Because it's not just about managing your energy as a resource. It's about realizing that each yes is an investment, and investments need a return. If there's no return, you don't invest, you waste. If your dedication doesn't strengthen your position, doesn't increase your respect, doesn't create real value, then it's a wasteful expenditure. And no one survives constant waste. Have you ever thought about how many hours of your life have been wasted? Have you ever reflected on how many days of your existence have been consumed for the sake of people who don't even remember what you did for them? This is the most bitter calculation, because when you start adding up the years you wasted giving yourself without measure, you realize your life capital has been drained, and what have you received in return? Nothing but wear and tear. The math is simple. Those who don't control their resources end up slaves to the expectations of others. Those who don't manage their own energy end up living at the service of others. And slaves are not respected. They are used to the limit, then discarded. But there's something that changes the game. When you learn to say no, when you start setting boundaries, when you refuse to waste energy on causes that don't strengthen your position, something unexpected happens. The world starts to look at you differently. Respect appears where before there was only exploitation, because no creates scarcity, and scarcity creates value. Your time becomes seen as precious. Your attention becomes a competitive asset. Your energy ceases to be a public resource and becomes a rare asset. Have you ever noticed how people who know how to deny things are treated more carefully? Have you noticed that those who set clear boundaries are respected even by those who don't like them? This happens because the world understands the language of barriers better than that of availability. When you're always accessible, you're not valued. When you're selective, you elicit caution. And caution is respect. The economy of power works like this. Every yes must be a calculated investment. Every no must be asset protection. If you learn to manage this game, your presence begins to be seen as capital, not a free resource. But this revelation also carries a dark warning. Because when you begin to change your stance, many around you will react with anger, not because you're wrong, but because they've grown accustomed to benefiting from your weakness. They'll call you selfish, accuse you of changing, and try to manipulate your guilt. And that's when you need to resist. Because this resistance is a sign that you're breaking the cycle. How many people in your life only stayed because you were always available? How many of them would disappear if you stopped giving without measure? This is the question that separates those who respect you from those who merely use you. Those who remain after you set boundaries are those who truly value you. Those who disappear or rebel were merely draining your energy. And this distinction, however painful, is liberating, because you finally discover who deserves your presence and who deserves only your silence. The economy of power isn't theoretical. It's practical. Every day you're spending or investing, every word you utter, every gesture you make is currency in circulation. If you don't control, others control for you. If you don't decide, others decide for you. And before you know it, you're broke, without energy, without respect, without a legacy. But if you learn to manage, your life changes. Your time becomes precious. Your energy becomes seen as strength. Your presence becomes respected. And at this point, you understand what Machiavelli already knew. Those who wish to be obeyed must first learn to command, and no one commands without reserve. Are you willing to continue living as if you had infinite capital, just to please others? Or will you finally take control of your inner economy and become your own master? Because this is where the ultimate turning point lies. It's not enough to control your kindness. It's not enough to control your appearance. You need to control your inner economy like a ruthless guardian, because without reservations there is no respect. Without respect, there is no power. And without power, your life becomes a stage for others to write history in your place. And that's exactly what will lead us to the next truth. Because even when you learn to manage your resources, there's an even more dangerous illusion that needs to be broken. The illusion that gratitude will sustain your worth. What you'll discover now is that gratitude isn't a contract, it's smoke. And if you continue building your life on it, your downfall will be inevitable. We've come this far, traversing hard, uncomfortable, and even painful truths. You've been led on a journey in which every layer of illusion has been stripped away before your eyes. You've discovered that reckless kindness doesn't protect, but exposes. That limitless generosity doesn't strengthen, but imprisons. That appearance is more powerful than essence when the world judges in seconds. That your energy, your time, and your attention aren't virtues floating in the air, but currencies that must be managed with care. And now, at this final point, remains an even more uncomfortable, but also more liberating revelation. Because even if you learn to control all of this, you can still be fooled by the sweetest of illusions. Gratitude. You believe you'll be remembered for helping. You believe those you supported will forever carry the memory of your efforts. You believe those you dedicated yourself to will honor what you did. But the truth is much crueler. Gratitude isn't a contract, it's smoke. Today it exists, tomorrow it disappears. Today the thank you sounds sincere, tomorrow it's just silence. The human mind is selective. It doesn't keep track of the entire record. It doesn't dwell on history. It fixates on the immediate present. If you help 10 times and fail once, it's the failure that remains. If you offer 100 gestures and refuse one, it's the refusal that echoes. This is the relentless game that reality insists on showing you. Gratitude sustains nothing. How many times have you been forgotten by the very people you helped the most? How many times have you felt all your effort wiped away like dust by a single refusal? This is proof that building your life expecting eternal loyalty is condemning yourself to disappointment. Because loyalty sustained solely by gratitude is a mirage. It lasts as long as you continue to give. The moment you withdraw, it all evaporates. It's hard to accept this, but it's also liberating. Because it means you need to stop negotiating with gratitude and start negotiating with structure. Stop expecting recognition as payment. Demand it in the form of rules. Set limits, create conditions, define deadlines, and make clear the scope of your delivery. Don't be the friend who helps endlessly. Be the one who helps with a beginning, middle, and end. Don't be the professional who accepts endless demands. Be the one who makes it clear how far they'll go. Don't be the partner who always gives in. Be the one who chooses to give in at strategic moments. The difference is stark. The first is used. The second is respected. Have you ever noticed that those who ask for recognition the least are the ones who receive it the most? And have you ever noticed that those who beg for gratitude are rarely taken seriously? This happens because the world doesn't value those who wait. It values those who impose. Respect is born of the concrete, not the intangible. Gratitude is a sigh. Rules are walls. When you translate your energy into clear boundaries, the world learns that your help isn't infinite, that your presence isn't automatic, that your availability isn't gratuitous. And in that moment, respect blossoms where before there was only exploitation. But there's an even deeper point. Because even if you learn to control kindness, generosity, appearance, internal economy, and the illusion of gratitude, the central question still remains. What truly sustains respect? It's not your intentions, It's not your kindness. It's not your sacrifices. What sustains respect is your results. The world doesn't bow to what you dream, but to what you make happen. Think back to your own story. How many times have you tried to keep the peace and ended up ignored? How many times have you sacrificed yourself for others and ended up alone? Instead, think about the times when you produced concrete results. At work, when you delivered something no one else could. In your personal life, when you made a decision that changed the course of a situation. In those moments, your voice gained weight, your presence became greater, your name circulated more strongly. Respect is not built on promises, but on deeds. Have you ever wondered why harsh, demanding, and even unfriendly people are remembered and respected, while others, full of good intentions, are forgotten? The answer is simple: because the results endure. The permissive master is forgotten. The demanding master who shaped character is remembered for decades. The sympathetic boss disappears without leaving a mark. The boss who achieved victories leaves a legacy. The world doesn't feed on good intentions. It feeds on achievements. This is what Machiavelli meant when he said that the end justifies the means. Not because the means don't matter, but because the world only sees the end. And here we come to the coldest point of all. It's not enough to achieve results. You have to survive long enough to transform them into a legacy. How many talented, intelligent, and generous men and women have you known who were destroyed too soon? How many disappeared before cementing their victories? History doesn't remember their names. History only remembers those who endured. Legacy doesn't belong to the kindest nor the most intelligent. It belongs to the one who remained standing when all others fell. Have you ever considered how many names of truly good people have been erased from the collective memory? Have you ever considered how many tough, even hated men and women continue to be remembered because they resisted to the end? This is the final and most uncomfortable truth. To be respected, it's not enough to seek results. You must protect yourself from wear and tear. You must tend to your inner fire so it doesn't go out prematurely. A generous person who exhausts themselves protects no one. An honest person who remains silent transforms nothing. A just person who sacrifices themselves to the point of disappearing builds no legacy. To be truly respected, you must survive. You must preserve yourself. You must learn to protect yourself, and this is where everything converges. Because all the previous truths converge in this conclusion. Kindness must be calculated. Generosity must be selective. Appearance must be controlled. Energy must be managed. Gratitude must be understood as smoke. Results must be sought as a priority, and survival must be defended as a last rampart. This is the key Machiavelli left centuries ago. This is the key that modern psychology confirms. This is the key that history repeats. You must choose whether you want to be loved and forgotten or respected and remembered. You must decide whether you will live like the sheep seeking approval or the strategist building presence. You must accept that love is volatile, but respect leaves its mark. That being liked is pleasant, but being respected is vital. That pleasing everyone is an illusion, but setting limits is survival. And now, after hearing all this, there's no point in just thinking. It's time to act. It's time to put it into practice. How do you start? By introducing silence, by not responding immediately, by creating a pause before saying yes, by saying no when necessary, without justification, by limiting your energy, by establishing rules, by choosing when to give and when to refuse, by projecting firmness, by seeking visible results, and above all, by preserving yourself. This is the path, simple in appearance, but profound in consequences. What would happen if starting today, you decided to no longer negotiate your worth for crumbs of approval? What would change if you traded the need to be liked for the decision to be respected? The answer is in your hands. You can continue living as you always have, accumulating disappointments, accumulating fatigue, giving everything and receiving little. Or you can take the uncomfortable, difficult, and transformative step, taking control of your life, setting your limits, choosing your investments, projecting your strength, and earning respect. It's not a comfortable path, but it's the only one that leads to true freedom. And if you've made it this far, it's no accident. Something inside you recognizes those words. Something inside you knows you can't live the same way anymore. So I want you to take action now. Write in the comments, even anonymously, "I choose to be respected." Not as an empty phrase, but as a personal declaration. Because writing is the first act of commitment. And if this video resonated with you, like it, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel to continue this journey. We don't offer empty entertainment here. We build strategic weapons, power tools, and uncomfortable reminders that can transform your life. You don't need to be loved by everyone, but you do need to be respected by yourself and by those who dare to cross your path. Remember Machiavelli's warning, it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. The choice is before you.